welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder, and I'm sick, so I sound like this. Today's episode is brought to you by Dianne Cassidy Consulting.
How fun!
Exciting! We're going to hear more about Dianne's Cassidy Consulting. Do you have a slogan or something?
No, I have no slogan. Yeah.
If you want help, call me. We're going to go into detail about Dianne Cassidy Consulting in our ad break, and you can learn about, how to get in touch and things she can help with, and etc. You can also find more about Dianne Cassidy Consulting at DianneCassidyConsulting.com. But not there. You can't find well, you probably can't find some of the podcasts.
Yeah.
But you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast at gmail.com. No, badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. And check out our sponsor page to see all of our sponsors. And if you ever need anything, try and give them your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address and we'll send you episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are on Patreon and we're hoping to see you there because we are having so much fun with our extra episodes and our Zoom hangouts that we have one coming up, right? In the next week or something?
Weeks, yeah.
So click the link at the very top in the show notes, wherever you're listening from under this episode, click see more or something, and there'll be notes. And right at the top, there'll be a link and you can check out all the different options. And we're still hosting our ongoing giveaway for people who leave reviews around the internet. Just take a screenshot of that review. Send it to badassbreastfeedingpodcast at gmail.com. And we will send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. Include your address in that email. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
I do. And it says, I absolutely love this podcast. Been listening for 4 years now.
Oh my God.
I know it. Started when I was pregnant with my first, nursed him for 20 months. I am now nursing my second. I feel so confident thanks to these ladies. 4 years, girl.
Wow.
That's amazing. I know. You've been with us for quite a ride. And we've been with you for quite a ride, it sounds like. So you've done an amazing job. And thank you so much for being such a dedicated listener. It is
that's
amazing.
Cool.
It's really cool. I mean, people have definitely told us, that they've listened through more than one baby. So I love that. But it's like, oh my God, thank you so much. I guess I always just imagine people like listen to an episode and move on. I never, I don't know what people do if they stay with us or whatever. So it's like, thank you so much for staying with us through our chaos.
I know.
We appreciate it.
Cool. I mean, and I think
Very
people
cool.
just like to learn things. I mean, I remember when I was breastfeeding, I liked to, sorry, I'm like wheezing. I liked to read about it and listen about it. And even if something didn't really exactly apply to me, I just liked to learn about it because you just don't ever learn about it.
I know.
So then you're in a position where you're doing it and then you get to learn all this stuff and it's so cool because you're doing it and you realize how awesome it is. And it's just fun.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I'm glad people are learning some stuff from us. So thank you for that this morning. And we're going to hopefully teach people about breastfeeding rules.
Oh, yeah. All those
today.
Dumb rules.
Yeah. Rules that should not be rules.
Yeah. So these are things that you hear in the hospital or from your pediatrician and things that are really just common. You're commonly thought to be a rule, like a standard.
Yeah. People make breastfeeding way harder than it needs to be. It's already hard enough.
Yeah, it's hard enough. And then
people make it way harder than it needs to be by throwing out all these rules that you should follow in order to be successful at breastfeeding. And they're just ridiculous.
Well, yeah. And the point being that you'll hopefully give up and buy the formula.
Mm.
I mean, that's where all this misinformation comes from, as we learned in our other episode, from marketing.
Yeah.
Straight from the pediatricians. Those ones back in the day that were selling formula out of their offices. And they're like,
way back in the...
You can't breastfeed, I don't know, for whatever X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G reason that they give.
It's crazy.
So, yeah, we're going to debunk those.
So the first one that I had was that babies should breastfeed 8 to 12 times a day. Because that's what we hear. Babies should be breastfeed about 8 to 12 times a day. And I've even fallen victim to like saying this sometimes when people ask, how many times a day should my baby breastfeed? And we say, well, we say like 8 to 12 times a day. But then I always say, but breastfed babies should feed on demand, which means that that could be 15 times a day when they're newborn. It could change every day too. It could be, 8 times one day and 14 times the next day. The best thing to do is to not think about it, not count it, because then what happens is people go, oh my gosh, my baby fed 14 times today. Do I have a milk supply problem? Something going on with my milk supply? Are they not getting enough? Maybe I should supplement. Or you tell you look it up and people say, oh yeah, your baby should only be breastfeeding 8 to 12 times a day. It really depends on the baby. These kind of things, like these rules are kind of thrown out there. But what we need to really remember when we're talking about babies is that they all do something different. We can't write a book based on the babies because they're all different and they all do something different. It's just, just how they are.
And when I had a newborn and I was nursing on demand the first time, just because, I don't know, I only had one and I was just nursing all day. I couldn't tell you how many times they fed.
Right.
Like I just never counted. I never thought you were supposed to. I guess if somebody had like said, oh, you're supposed to count, then I would have started counting and it would have been like mania.
Yeah, because you get obsessed with it.
Yeah, if somebody had said like, oh, how many times did your baby feed? I would have been like, I don't have any idea.
Yeah, I don't remember counting either. But my kids were before the apps got really big. And that is such a big thing now is the apps. And everybody tracks every feeding and they, it counts it for them. My baby fed this many times
delete
today.
The app.
The apps will make you anxious.
That should be your slogan. Dianne Cassidy Consulting. Delete the app.
Oh, that's a good one. That's good.
That's what my pediatrician was like, throw away your thermometer.
Oh, did you take his temperature all the time?
Yeah. I mean, not all the time, but he just said, throw it away. You don't need it. You need to watch what they're doing.
That's awesome.
He's like, just don't take their temperature. Watch what they're doing. I'm like, oh my God. How can you possibly do that? And now, even to this day, I just kind of like put my lips on their forehead and I'm like, yeah, he has a fever. And my mom's like, how high is it? What is it? I'm like, I don't know. He's got a fever. He's warm. I can tell.
Yeah.
And he seems okay. He's not like lethargic or, whatever. You just we watch their behavior.
Right.
Anyway.
And that's, this isn't that different. You're watching your baby.
Right, you're watching
them.
They
seem hungry, feed them. I mean, it really, it shouldn't be like, oh, it hasn't time yet. They just fed an hour ago.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Babies don't have any idea. All they know is that they've got this urge to nurse. They don't know what time it is. They don't know when they last did it.
They have no idea. And my next one kind of goes along with this, is that babies should be on a schedule. And people get obsessed with schedules too. And the thing that really, I think that goes along with this is returning to work, because people get really nervous that like my baby's going to be, I have to get my baby on some kind of schedule. I'm going back to work. I have to get my baby on some kind of schedule. And babies don't care about a schedule. They have no idea about it. And babies change so frequently just because of the way they grow. They're developmentally changing all the time, that they don't necessarily stick to schedules. So it might be that you kind of get something somewhat regular and then they switch it up because the hell do they care? They're just like going along, growing and learning and changing, and they just switch it up. But trying to get them, like, if somebody tells you your baby should be on a schedule, isn't your baby on a schedule yet? Why is your baby not on a schedule? Some babies just gravitate on their own to being, kind of somewhat, you can kind of set your clock to them, but some of them just don't. It really just, again, depends on the baby, and trying to get them on a schedule can just be maddening because it, doesn't always work like that. But that, I blame a lot of that on the return to work piece, because we just want to, I always tell people that if your baby's going to be in like a daycare situation, they're probably going to get on some kind of a regular routine, because that's what they do in daycares. They feed them at this time.
The whole entire world is on a schedule, except for babies.
Babies do
and
not
it's
care.
Like, we're just like, oh my God, you have got to get with the program, man. And they just don't. They just don't. They don't do like we do.
Little selfish beings that they are.
Yes, stubborn brats.
I know. So don't feel like you have to get your baby on some kind of a routine, especially in the first month and a half, because as they get older, like I said, they kind of gravitate into something a little bit more, regular. But overall, don't expect them to be on. And I think if you just don't expect them to be on one, that's just easier, right? Like, totally. If you're not expecting it, then you're just kind of rolling with it. And that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. I think rolling with it is like the hardest thing to do when you have a new baby.
It really is.
It's like, no, I need to freak out about everything. That's what my inside's telling me. So like, they're telling me danger, danger.
Mm-hmm. But there's nothing wrong with your baby if they don't roll by some sort of schedule. You're totally okay. Do you want to do one?
Sure, I'll do one. I came up with some when Dianne told me this idea. Okay, shit. Where? Oh no, I have to find it in my phone. Oh my God. Oh, here. So my first one is you should never put your baby in your bed. And that was one of the first things that people told me. I remember the guy looking right at me. It was just some random doctor when I took Jack for his first follow-up appointment after we got out of the hospital. And he just said, never, ever put your baby in your bed. And I was like, oh my God, okay, damn. That is not really a thing. It's actually, it makes breastfeeding much more difficult. Co-sleeping and sharing a bed with your baby really facilitates that nursing on demand that we want to see, and that nursing through the night, which we want to see, which is so exhausting, but is such an important time to be nursing. And the best thing to do is to, even before your baby gets here, and if you're already holding your baby, then it's too late. But just do it now. Create a safe bed sharing situation so that when you need it, or when you accidentally fall into it, it'll be safe. And that's the thing. That's what I find is, I find this rule so dangerous, because people are like, okay, I won't put my baby in my bed. And this is what I did. So then I went to the rocking chair. I went to the couch. And I was just passing out because I'm sleeping. And, the baby's rolling into your chest. I mean, nothing ever happened, but thank God.
But that's dangerous.
That's dangerous. So dangerous. Your baby can just fall, and people I would sit in the rocking chair with the boppy, and you fall asleep. The boppy's not flat. It's round. The baby can just roll towards you and just get stuck in there, or get stuck on the side of the couch. And this is how babies die.
Yeah, that is how they die.
Not by sleeping next to a sober breastfeeding parent. Now, there are things that make bed sharing not a safe option for you. If you're on certain kinds of medication, if you drink, if you smoke, if you have certain ways you set up your bed to be safe, and, we can add the links in here. If you haven't heard all the episodes that we've done on this, but, for some people, it's not an option. And that's just how it is. But to say as a rule that you shouldn't do that is really, that's dangerous. Right. And it doesn't help anyone because people are going to do it. That's what we found. People are finding a way to sleep while they're nursing their babies.
Mm-hmm. And then they're lying about it, so they're never getting the right information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if you go to the doctor and say that you're sleeping with their baby, they're like, "Oh my God, no, your baby has to sleep separately."
But they're not going to say to you, "Do you have a safe bed space set up?
Right?
Are you drinking? Do you have pets in the bed with you? Make sure none of that is going on." They're not doing any of that. They're just telling you, "No, don't do it."
Yeah.
And that's a hard rule to follow. And then but they don't, then you go to other places. Like Abby said, you go to the recliner, you go to the couch, you go to the rocking chair, and those are unsafe places.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Because that is a big rule that we hear.
Yeah.
My next one is you have to pump. So a lot of times people will say you have to pump. Make sure you're pumping, or are you pumping, or pump to see how much milk you're getting, or, we as a society, we really do way too much with these pumps. We really focus a lot on pumping, and a lot of the time it's not necessary. You don't need to pump to keep a milk supply. You really don't. If your baby is just nursing on demand, you don't need to pump an additional amount of milk a day to make sure that your supply doesn't go away. Your supply is going to stay strong because your baby's nursing a lot. It has nothing to do with the pump. You don't need to pump. If you're going back to work, if you're being separated from your baby, then obviously, yes, we do need you to pump because of that. But if you're not, if you're with your baby feeding on demand, you don't need to pump. It's just not necessary. It's one more thing to do, and it can mess up your supply. It can cause an oversupply, which can be a big problem. Oversupply can cause plugged milk ducts, can cause mastitis. It can cause a lot of problems, discomfort, constant leaking, fullness all the time. And if your baby is just nursing, your body is going to regulate to what your baby needs. You don't need to pump just to make sure your supply stays where it is. And pumping to see how much milk you're making does not work. It does not tell you how much milk you're making. It just tells you how much milk you're pumping. That is a rule I wish would go away. I really wish people would stop saying that. And I hear that still all the time. And it's just not a thing. It's not.
It just causes panic.
It does.
It's the only outcome. That's the only thing that can happen from that piece of advice is for people to freak out.
Right. Because what happens when their body pumps an ounce of milk? Then you're like, oh my God, I'm only making an ounce of milk. What happens? And I mean, I'm not just exaggerating. I've had people contact me about it. This is a real thing. It causes a lot of panic. It's unnecessary. And I know people want to pump because they want to have other people feed the baby and all that stuff, which is fine if you pump where you need to. We're not saying don't pump at all. If you need to pump, then pump. But if you're home with your baby, this is for people who are like, do I need to, my baby's nursing regularly. Do I need to pump to make sure my supply stays where it is? No, you don't. You're nursing your baby. Pumping is for when you're separated from your baby. Nursing is for when you're with your baby. The pump is just a tool. It is not something that you need to depend on. This is just doesn't work like that. And the other thing with pumping is don't start pumping too soon because that is going to cause an oversupply. So what I see a lot of is people, coming home from the hospital, they're not told that they shouldn't be pumping. Their milk is coming in. They're feeling full because their milk is coming in. So they just pump and feed their baby and pump. And then they get stuck in this pumping routine that never goes away. And then they get stuck with this oversupply issue. And it's a mess. It's just a mess. So pumping can really cause problems if it's not used the right way.
Yeah.
We should probably take our break.
Oh, okay. We'll be right back. So today's episode is brought to you by Dianne Cassidy Consulting.
Me.
Woo! Dianne.
Woo. Yes.
So, how do people, tell us about your lactation career.
So I am a lactation consultant. I've been a lactation consultant since 2008. And I help parents through all sorts of different problems with breastfeeding. Anything from latch issues, multiples, tongue tie, suck dysfunction, any kind of, weight gain issues, nursing strikes, anything that is happening with your baby, I can help with. And I have had the opportunity to work in all different areas, which I think kind of sets things apart a little bit because I never was in like just one place,
Right.
I worked in the community. I worked in the hospital. I worked in a pediatrician's office. I've seen babies from when they were born, the minute they were born to when they wean, which is nice because if you're a hospital LC, you only get to see those babies from day 1 to day 3. And that's it. And I remember even when I worked in the hospital, I was also working in the community and people would call with questions, with breastfeeding questions. They'd call the hospital and sometimes the lactation consultants that I work with would be like, this baby is 6 weeks old, mom's having pain. You better talk to her because we wouldn't have any idea about that because they don't feel those kind of concerns after the initial first couple of days. So you definitely, when you're looking for a lactation consultant, you want somebody who is well-rounded, who has been able to see all the things that are going on and that has good connections and, that can help you answer your questions and make sure that you feel really confident with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do.
And do you have clients that are listeners to this podcast?
I do. Yeah. I definitely do have some clients that are listeners to the podcast, which is kind of fun.
Listeners of the podcast? Not listeners to the podcast.
Oh, yes. Listeners of the podcast.
I don't know.
I do have some that are listeners. Yes. And then some of the podcasts, some podcast listeners have reached out to do virtual consults with me as well. Which is always something that I can do with people. You don't have to live in my area. You have to live in my area if you want to be seen in person, obviously. But you don't have to live in my area to do a virtual consult. And I can help with lots of things virtually. I think sometimes people don't realize that that is an option, but there's definitely things that you can help with virtually.
I mean, it is so much nicer too, especially if you have a new baby.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's just nice to not have to go anywhere and just be able to talk to somebody online, which we realize now a lot of things can be done online.
I know. So it does help a lot.
So you can help very effectively over the internet.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
And how do people like sign up for this? Like, how would people get in contact with you?
So people can go to my website, DianneCassidyConsulting.com, and they can get my information there. People can just text me. A lot of times people will do that. They'll just text me. They can email me through there as well. You can just purchase a consult online and email with me to get it set up. So there's lots of ways to do it. My information is right online. I'm not hard to find at all. You can email me through the podcast at badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com, and we will get that as well. And we'll tell you, sometimes people will just, email us with questions, and sometimes we'll be like, I think you need a consult. If it's something that we can't really solve through an email.
Yeah.
We'll tell you, think you need a consult. And definitely be respectful about that, because sometimes people just want to ask questions, and it's like, it's hard to know what's going on with your baby without actually talking to you.
Yeah.
So I know, like, these consults people ask, are they covered by insurance? They should be, but 98% of the time they are not. And I know that's really hard, but it's worth it to get the help you need for you and your baby.
How much does it cost?
$90, which isn't much. You're going to probably pay more than that with anybody else.
Oh, yeah. You're going to pay more than that with anybody else. And you're going to pay way more than that when your breastfeeding doesn't work out and then you're buying formula.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's such a, like, we'd never question how much we're paying our doctors.
Right.
Which is never 100% covered by insurance.
Right.
At least mine isn't. I feel like I have pretty good insurance and it's never 100%.
Yeah, you're always paying something.
You're paying something. And if you're trying to breastfeed and you're having issues and this is something that can go on for years, your breastfeeding relationship, I mean, it is so much more worth it than that fancy crib or that fancy whatever else people are telling you that you absolutely have to have for your baby. You don't need any of it. Except for the stuff that we advertise. I'm just kidding. But we don't advertise useless shit. Like, there's things that make life easier and things that are going to help you along the way. And those are worth investing in.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is definitely worth the investment. It really is.
I agree.
For your baby's health and your health and everybody's well-being. That was
when I had Jack and things were going wrong. When I talked to that lactation consultant, I mean, it was the thing. It turned everything around. Mm-hmm. And he breastfed until he was 6.5 years old.
It's a huge difference.
It would have been, it would have been over. And it would have been a completely different story had I not reached out to somebody.
So that's it.
Yes. Thanks, Dianne. So head to DianneCassidyConsulting.com and sign up for your lactation consultation with Dianne. And you can also find all of that at Badass Breastfeeding Podcast badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. I don't know why I keep wanting to say the email. You'll find all of our sponsors, all of our other episodes. And yeah, let's get back to rules.
Yes. What else? Do you have one?
Yeah. Let's see. What else do I have? Where's my email again? Okay. Oh, you need to pump and dump.
Oh. Yeah, that's
I feel like that's just a rule for everything.
Yeah.
Like, what was I saw something recently? Oh, it was somebody, the video of a woman who had just had a baby and she was sitting next to like the hugest tray of sushi rolls and she was eating them. And everybody's dying in the comments. They're like, oh my God, you can't do that when you're breastfeeding. You can't have sushi. And I'm like, no, like you're all wrong. And sometimes I like to argue on the internet, like not on my page, but I like to go to other people's pages and argue. I won't do it on my page anymore, but I'll go to like these, just like some stupid online media account that just shares like dumb stories from around the world. And I'll just be like, no, you're all wrong. But then people were like, oh, you need to pump and dump your milk.
For sushi?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I was like, what?
That doesn't even make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense at all. And it doesn't, it's like, ridiculous. Even with pumping and dumping with medication, pumping and dumping with alcohol, pumping and dumping with medical procedures. What else do people pump and dump for? I don't know, all kinds of stuff. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Like this, like whatever it is in your body is being metabolized out. Like if you have a medical procedure, you wake up because that shit's gone from your system.
Right.
You're good to go. And like any medication, antidepressants, any kind of medication that people are taking, I mean, like most of the time it's fine, especially for like the real common ones, like
oh yeah,
to deal with anxiety and depression and stuff like that.
oh
And
yeah, for sure.
Also alcohol, that doesn't, the amount that gets into your milk is just not worth worrying about.
Yeah.
And pumping and dumping doesn't make it go away from your system faster. It's going to just metabolize the way it metabolizes.
It is such a dumb. I wonder where that came from.
Yeah,
it is so stupid.
Remember? It
yeah,
rhymes.
Yeah, it rhymes.
Good. We have to come up with other rhymes to like negate.
But for sushi,
I know.
Who is saying that? And like, where does somebody even get that from? That's so random and weird.
I know. And people are reading it, and probably some poor person's like, oh no. Do I need to do that?
I ate sushi yesterday and didn't pump and dump. Now what's going to happen to my baby? We're just causing more panic out there.
Uh-huh.
That's what these rules do.
Well, and the rules are also, it's just like, well, I mean, it's like, let's make it harder. Let's make it seem impossible. And then people give up.
Right. Because you have to change your whole life. Mm-hmm. You have to change everything. You can't eat what you want to eat. And that's actually my next one.
Oh, good.
It goes perfect. That you have to follow a special diet to breastfeed. And people say that all the time. You have to follow a certain diet. You have to, you can't eat this. You can't eat that. I mean, it's like that when you're pregnant. When you're pregnant, you can't eat sushi. But when you're breastfeeding, you absolutely can. There's no rule behind that. You don't have to pump and dump. That's ridiculous. You don't have to. It's totally fine. But people tell you all the time that you can't eat certain things. And I always tell people you can eat whatever you want to. Just if you think about people all over the world breastfeed, all over the world. And there's some cultures that eat very spicy foods. There's some cultures that eat very exotic foods. There's some cultures that eat very bland foods. Like there's so much different foods out there that people are eating and they're breastfeeding.
Yeah. And it's usually those countries that aren't struggling to breastfeed.
Right.
Like us here. And it's not because of our diet. That's not the problem with the breastfeeding.
I always tell people that. I'm like, what do you think they're doing in other countries where they eat foods that are spicy? Because here, that's one of the things. You can't eat spicy foods. Yeah. Can't eat tomato sauce. You can't eat, like, it's too acidic. You can't eat it. You can't eat this. You can't eat that. You can't eat all these things. I always, then people will ask about milk. What about milk? Babies have a problem with milk. It is true that some babies struggle with cow's milk protein sensitivity. However, it's not as frequent as people think it is. And giving up dairy, if you want to give up dairy and that's something that you want to do, go right ahead. That's up to you. This is something I've just said, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a lactation consultant since 2008. I was worked in lactation a couple years before that. So I've been doing this for a long time. And back in 2008 and before that, we didn't hear about dairy being an issue like it is now. It was not something we ever talked about. And now if your baby's fussy, people are like, oh, give up dairy. That's what I did. It really worked for me. It's like sometimes babies are just fussy.
I've heard this with chefs too, for chefs from different countries, that they'll be like, I've never heard of an allergy of that. Like, I've never heard of a peanut allergy, or I've never heard of a whatever. And like, it's just interesting. Not to say that people are making up their peanut allergy, but how are we like developing these things differently in different countries?
Right.
Which is just interesting.
It really is. But I talked to an allergist once. I had a client. Her husband was a pediatric allergy doctor person. And we talked about it.
That's on his card. I'm an allergy doctor kid person.
Pediatric allergy doctor person. And I was like, what about the dairy thing? And he was just like, yeah, not as much as people think. And I'm like, that's what I thought. That's what I read. Because if you do research on it, they'll give you the numbers and it's not as high as people think it is. It's a very small percentage of babies that struggle with cow's milk protein sensitivity. And it is not as common as people think it is. So it's just something you don't have to because you're breastfeeding, don't take it out of your diet right away. Wait and see if there's some kind of, something else going on. And then, kind of go from there.
Yeah. That does not change the fact that your baby does not need cow's milk to drink themselves as a replacement for breast milk.
Right.
Because of whatever, some stupid, doesn't have enough fat in it or whatever. Your baby never needs cow's milk. This is like, if this is in your house, cool. If not, don't worry about it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of adults that have trouble digesting dairy.
Well, yeah, it's from a different species. I mean, it's pretty understandable that it doesn't sit well with some of our systems.
I mean, that's why they make, what is that, lactate or something like that?
Yeah.
Because some people just can't handle dairy. And that's just how it is. So they don't want to give it to their baby, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
You really don't. You don't have to.
But if you're breastfeeding and you like it, you don't have to take it out of your diet, because going through your breast milk, that's not an issue.
We don't have milk in our house.
No. I mean, we have like almond milk in our house.
That's what we have. Yeah, we don't have
cow's
milk. Yeah, we don't have cow's
milk. I can't even be around cow's milk. I don't know why. It just grosses me out so much.
I know it. Like the older I get, the more
Yeah. And I feel like
I was going to say, my mom's from that generation where it's like, it's good for you. Why would you not want it?
You have to get your calcium. That's what the cow's milk lobbyists did. They made us all think that we needed it for calcium and for whatever, your bone growth. That's all nonsense.
You can get it from other foods.
Yeah. From foods that were actually made for your species of being.
Yeah.
Especially now, do you have any breast milk?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I have one more.
Okay.
I keep going away from it. Okay. Okay. This is something that we saw come up a lot in the last few years. You need to separate mom and baby when one of them is sick.
Oh, that's awful. And just not a good rule.
We saw that so much. And people still ask about that. They're like, well, I'm sick. Should I still be breastfeeding? Should I be isolating? No, that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, you don't want to separate from your baby. I always tell people, like, if they contact me and say, I've got a really bad stomach bug, or I've got, a stomach bug or whatever, should I be breastfeeding? Should I not be breastfeeding? If you are sick, you are automatically, your body is making antibodies. So you are passing those protective antibodies to your baby through your breast milk. So the likelihood of your baby getting sick from you is pretty low. I personally, when I'm sick, don't want anybody near me. So I can totally appreciate that if you're sick, if you're like, I just want to lay here and be sick, then that's fine. If you don't feel up to breastfeeding, you can pump milk and give that to your baby. But there is no rule and no reason to separate from your baby because you're sick. It's totally fine to keep giving them your breast milk, and it's preferred for them to have your breast milk and for you to still breastfeed them and still be with them, because your baby doesn't know you're sick. They don't want to be away from you.
Yeah, and if they do get sick, which they might, and that's okay. People get sick and babies get sick. The best place for them is nursing from you with all of those antibodies that your body is making.
Yeah. It is really.
I feel like I am traumatized from all the people that were being separated during COVID, and I didn't even have a baby. God.
It was awful.
It was so fucking scary, and people were just messaging nonstop, like, "Oh my God, I'm pregnant, and now they're saying they're going to have to separate me if I test positive for COVID." It was absolutely insane.
I know.
It was awful. We were like the only country doing it.
Like, what do you do? Like, if you're in that situation, what do you do? Take your baby and run? Like,
I'd be like, I'm having my baby in this bathtub right now. You all can fuck off.
I know.
Stay away from me.
People were doing. Like, people were having.
People were doing that.
These, unassisted births, and that's what we were being driven to. People wanted home births. Which, I can't.
Which is great in some ways, but if that's not what you wanted and you're doing it out of fear, that sucks.
I mean, and I know here where I live, we didn't have them. we didn't have enough home birth midwives to be able to support that.
Yeah. That's why people were just like, I'm doing it. They're so scared their baby's going to be taken away.
Yeah.
You guys can't do that to people.
Oh, it was awful. So, yeah. So you do not, there's no reason to separate from your baby. Mm-mm. Not at all.
Well, thanks for all the info and thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.